stage
Some
anyway.
people step down.
Yeah.
It's 8 o'clock.
Yep.
You ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. Maybe we should just take a second, since we have a couple new members of the board, to introduce Dina first, yourself, please.
My name's Dina Stanley. I'm a actual tax accountant by profession, and this is my first board meeting.
Welcome. And
Welcome.
Steve?
I'm Steve Voris. I'm a boat broker here in town, and this is my first meeting as well. Thank you.
Okay, good. Welcome also. So first action is to review the minutes of the last meeting in December. Are there any comments about the minutes? If not, can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second it.
And a second. Everybody in favor? Aye.
Yep.
And no one opposed. All right, thank you. Next item, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. So do we have some folks today that would like to address the board about anything? Okay, apparently not. So I guess those that are here are primarily for the presentations later. Thank you. New business items, a presentation by Moffatt and Nickel. Is that our first item?
Absolutely. And I'd like to introduce the design lead for Moffatt Nichols. Just a brief history is, you know, it was a very competitive RFP process, and Moffatt Nichols went out. Their resume was immaculate. Nicole, who's the design lead for Moffatt Nichols, she's been with Moffatt Nichols for 12 years, and her background is in marine structural engineering. Her career has been focused on planning and designing of marinas through the Tampa Bay and Florida area. And they're the co-authors of the U.S. Navy's latest guidelines on floating docks. So I'd like to introduce Nicole. And then Jeff is the project manager for the city of Clearwater out of the engineering department. Jeff's been with the city 16 years, 18 years. I know it was either 16 or 18. He's worked in both planning department and engineering as a construction project manager. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Hi. Morning.
Our pointer is not working, so I'm going to try to use the mouse for this. Pauli, P-A-U-L-Y. Yes, and so with Moffatt and Nickel, we're also teamed with Kimley Horn and Associates for landscape architecture, and Wanamaker Jensen Architects for architecture, and several of their graphics are going to be shown. So I wanted to make sure that they got some credit for that. So once we were selected, we met with the city to talk about what the goals are for the project, and the city wanted to optimize the marina slip mix and modernize the layout. And the city owns lands that are to the south of the marina, and so they'd like to maximize the city-owned submerged lands, but maintain the existing 165 slip count and the balance between the commercial and recreational vessels. They also wanted us to look at upland storage and ticket kiosk sales opportunities for the items that are currently on the dock, and to look at reducing congestion along Coronado Drive, where that bottom picture there, you could see that during peak hours it can be difficult to move around. And so, in an attempt to do that, they wanted to look at us activating what they're calling Marina Walk. It's the identity, taking Beach Walk and turning it to the east along the marina parking lot. And one of the critical elements of the project was to maintain commercial operations during construction and to provide 2 boat slips for a water taxi based on a Pinellas County grant. So I think all of you are familiar with the marina, so I'll just stop on this slide for a second to show the approximate in-water and upland areas for the project. As you can see, this is primarily a marina project, and but we are looking at some upland improvements around the perimeter of the marina to try to help activate this waterfront. So just a quick recap on where we are in the project. We got notice to proceed in October and attended a kickoff meeting in November, a design workshop in December, and completed a marina market study in January, which I'll go over some of the results shortly. We also started some commercial tenant outreach. We did a virtual survey and had held a couple of tenant meetings. And throughout that time, we've been developing a master plan, which I will also show you shortly. This month, we're looking to initiate environmental permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers, which is a critical path item for the project, and to have a building plan review committee meeting, which is scheduled for later this month. We're in the process of doing geotechnical engineering right now, and we'll conclude our field work in June when seagrass season opens, when we have to do our marine resource survey, which is a requirement for permitting. And we are starting to initiate the schematic design phase, which is approximately 30% design. That's where we're going to start looking at actual structure design and detailed elements. And then design development is scheduled for the fall, and construction documents for the winter and into the beginning of next year. So I'm going to try to summarize a full market study document in 2 slides, so feel free to ask me to go back to some of this. But I think everyone's familiar. This is a very active boating market. It has more than 100 marinas and 5,000 boat slips, and so a lot of those marinas are not really represented to Clearwater Beach Marina, which is a destination marina. It is a very unique marina. And so what we did is we tried to hone in on a series of marinas based on where they are, where their geographic market or their demographic market. The marina size, that we looked at only marinas greater than 100 slips, and then we also looked at location relative to a population center. And we ended up with 8 marinas. 4 of them are inside the geographic market, and that's defined by the distance that somebody is willing to drive to get to their boat. And so that would be they would keep the boat at the marina and then drive to it. Then we expanded that and we looked at the demographic market, which is the yellow on the screen, and that picks up some additional marinas that meet the demographics of the city of Clearwater. And so those are predominantly destination marinas, and that's with a little bit more of a target on amenities and dock construction types. So for each of these marinas, we looked at market capacity, market trends, and market rates. Generally, the marinas all had high occupancy, 90% or higher, and several of the marinas have wait lists, including Clearwater Beach. We found that the slips that were not occupied tend to be less than 40 foot, and that is frequently due to both, one, the steady growth that is observed both nationwide and locally in boats larger than 40 foot, and also the addition of dry stack marinas and trailerable, in boats that size are trailerable. So you're seeing newer marinas are coming in and they're building more larger slips. When it came to market rates, the average market rate was $19 per foot per month in this area, and the transient rates were $2 to $3 per foot per month. We also looked at dock construction, and majority of the marinas do have fixed dock construction, pile-supported docks. But if you look, a lot of those facilities are older and in need of repair, and pretty much most of the new higher-end marinas all have floating docks. So looking at Clearwater Beach Marina specifically, the recreational, commercial, and transient market, slips are in high demand. The recreational slips, and that's really what this is focused on, is the recreational side, since we have a lot of the data for the existing commercial population. And so, there is a wait list for all vessel sizes at this marina, and since there is a demand for more larger slips in the industry and at this marina, you'll see that that's where we trended towards in our recommended slip mix for this. When it came to layouts and stuff, we're recommending, the slip widths right now are narrower than industry standard, and so we're recommending to go to wider slips that meet current industry standards. Boats are getting wider as they, the newer boats are wider. And then the slip rates are currently $10 to $12 per linear foot, per foot per month for the long-term leases, and that is significantly below that $19 per foot per length. So there are some opportunities to optimize there. The current marina, the basic utilities and the on-site amenities are comparable to the other destination marinas, and there have been some renovations in the last 10 years that actually make the on-site amenities desirable, but the utilities are outdated, and that's part of this project to look at. We also notice that fuel sales are a significant portion of the marina's revenue, and so we recommend that as long as the marina wants to continue that, they should keep the same number of slips and dispensers and could even increase from there if desired. So we looked at the existing recreational slip mix and the market trends, and what we saw is that there is more than 70% of boat slips at this marina that are less than 50 feet. And so with the market trending towards larger boats, we took a large percentage of that and shifted it up a category, taking a lot of those smaller boats up more into the 50 to 70 foot range, which is kind of the sweet spot for the growing market. And so we're still providing, recommending 25 to 30% of the marina be less than 50-foot boats, but you'll see that we're now more like 50% in the 50 to 70-foot range. I mentioned at the beginning that we did some tenant outreach with the commercial tenants, and so both from a virtual survey where we collected data for both vessel characteristics and operational needs, as well as some opportunities for them to write in some recommendations or concerns. And then we met with probably close to 10 of the commercial operators and talked to them, and there were very consistent feedback from a lot of them, and so I thought I'd just quickly run through that. And so, it's very important to them to be located in a highly visible location around the perimeter of the marina, and specifically the most desirable part of the marina is the western half of the marina, and that is because of all the pedestrian traffic that comes up and down Beach Walk. The sightseeing boats and the tour boats and the water sports and the ones that do a lot of walk-up traffic, point of sale is, at their slip or near their slip is very important to them. And that goes for the dinner cruise and the larger head boats as well for fishing, because they do such a large quantity of people, they would need somebody there to work with them. For the other fishing boats and the dinner cruise boats, storage at their slip is also very important. They currently have bait freezers and walk-in freezers and different types of ice machines and lots of ice machines. So finding a spot for those is also very important. And while you saw the parking lot is not really part of this project, I did want to note this because it was mentioned so many times, is that additional parking is desired, and that it was stated that parking at the site is a limitation. And finally, to the master plan. And so I've got some enlarged views of each of these areas here, but overall the primary, and I'll do my best to use the mouse for this. The primary focus of the master plan was to orient the recreational boat slips in the most desirable wind and wave conditions to try to limit movement of those boats while maintaining the visibility and accessibility of the commercial boats. And so you'll see these colored slip bubbles that line the perimeter of the marina, and those are the different commercial operations. We have managed to locate all of them along the perimeter. This is not the most efficient layout, but it is, we did have to extend some of this down, but I think we were able to achieve most of the, many of the concerns of the commercial tenants, as well as keeping the recreational tenants in mind as well. You'll see to the south here, southeast, we are maintaining the existing fuel dock location, but we are shifting it a little bit further to the south. And we are going to permit a replacement of the existing fuel dock building out there. Let's see. So focusing on the upland, and I keep saying this is a marina project, but the upland is actually one of the biggest challenges for this project. And so what we've tried to do here is take, the pedestrians up Beach Walk, get them to turn east and walk into an open-air plaza here where we have the kiosks set up for the boaters. And so these might be a combination of, we want to meet the modern elements of Clearwater Beach, but also maintain that charm of what is out there now. And so this might be a series of different colored kiosks or, shade structures, maybe even a seating area that could become a stage, so different items that really activate this area. And what we did is we made the entrance to the docks, so it's a fixed platform right here with gangways that come down to a floating dock. And so the fixed platform towards the center here draws everyone to the middle of this plaza instead of just picking up the first boat that comes along. So it kind of puts everyone on an even playing field at this west side. Then moving over to the east, looking at opportunities to really keep drawing people east of the building. And this concept creates a fishing village type feel where the fishing boats are located next to each other with all their fish cleaning stations focused towards the land. And so people get off the boat, go to clean the fish, and you see a lot of activity and stuff, but they're not actually throwing the fish onto the promenade like is currently happening. To add to that, we're looking at some art opportunities, something that would be like that Instagram moment for, fishing village themed over here. And then at the end, we're showing a kiosk group down here as well to support some of the some of the larger boats at the east side that don't fit over at the west. And we're looking at doing that in maybe a couple of groups down this eastern side here to help continuously have some activity to this area. Jumping back for 1 second here, just to hit this overall. The goal here was to just draw everyone to the east, down by the bait shop, and we are showing this destination node at the end, which could be seating or and a piece of art as well, but that this sidewalk would wrap around and connect to the Pinellas, to the Causeway bike trail and make a full loop around the property. So this also could be something that people come out and want to do for exercise. As I mentioned, we are maintaining the slip mix, so we're maintaining 50 commercial boats, 5 fuel dock slips, and we've added the 2 ferry slips, but that's come from the recreational. So that leaves 108 recreational slips and a total of 165. The table on the right here shows how this compares to the market study results, and you can see they're pretty close to in line. We have a few extra slips, less than 40, but those are primarily these day docks over here, so when we get into the design phase, this will be something we shift around. But overall, this is fairly in line with what we saw in the market. And just as a recap on the master plan's summary, the recreational slip mix does closely align with the market study results. We did slightly increase the commercial slip mix, and that was the intent to accommodate the future market. If people want to purchase new boats, or if one of the boats leaves, we want you to have some flexibility to be able to accommodate different slips. We were able to keep all of the boat slips for the commercial around the perimeter of the marina. We located the kiosks upland near the primary dock entrances to try to make the point of sale connection as close as we could. We will put the fish cleaning stations on the docks, as well as there'll be some limited storage options. And then we are looking at some sections of the building that can be modified to provide some additional storage options for the tenants. And then, we work to create the marina walk feel, which we supplement with wayfinding and art and shade and benches and, seating, so, that this is a desirable location for people to travel to all times a day, all times a year. So, hopefully I didn't run too long. Sure. Yeah, I mean, talking about aesthetic looks and stuff, we are looking to do some underwater lighting, which for one attracts fish and is very interesting, but also is very aesthetically pleasing typically to people walking at night. They might come out and walk the docks just to see something like that.
The underwater lighting going to be before or after the seawall replacement?
It would be,
Yeah.
it would be before,
I know.
ideally before, if,
Put a new seawall in 15 years.
yeah, it would connect to the docks,
Yeah.
most likely.
Of the, I think you said 108 slips that are not for commercial and water taxis and so on, whatever that number was, are some of those still going to be available for day visitors, Mike, like we currently have?
Yeah, next to the fuel dock, the blue slips there, or purple, I can't really tell what color that is.
Oh, okay.
Blue, yeah.
Yeah, right along there by the fuel dock. We're just moving them from where they are now.
Sure, that's super. Okay.
Yeah, and right now we haven't dedicated transient slips. We showed some of the day dock location, but, they'll have opportunity to use some of the long-term slips as transient as well for those weekenders or, week-long visit type stuff.
This is my first meeting, so to kind of catch up, could you give me just a real quick, what is driving this whole redevelopment, just so I can understand that?
Oh, yes, the marina is aging. It's been, while most of the elements have been replaced with time, it's towards the end of its service life, and it has been built in pieces over the years, starting in the 1950s. And so this was budgeted. This is actually started in about 2004, 2005 with some feasibility studies. It's been a long time working towards a complete marina replacement where they actually have the opportunity to come in and optimize it a little bit.
I figured that's what it was, but I just
Yeah.
want to make sure I'm clear as we go through this, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in optimizing the rates, you've changed the balance of the slips. Is that going to affect the present tenants that are there? Are there going to be some people left out in the cold because their less than 40-foot slip has disappeared? Because it's pretty much full right now, right? The occupancy of our marina?
Yes.
Are some people going to be left out of that, or be forced to say, I've got a 38-foot boat, but I got to buy this 50-foot slip or we'll still be going by the footage? So some of those boats may end up tying up these bigger spots meant for bigger boats.
Yeah, I would say that no boat will not have a spot, both on the commercial side and the recreational side, but they might have to lease a larger space. And so that could be a discussion with the marina on maybe providing a timeline where you allow people to pay for a 40-foot slip even though they're in a 50-foot slip for the next year or two, or there could be a
Year or
plan
2 or 3,
in
or
place.
time to buy a bigger boat.
Yeah,
If you're going to pay for the slip, might as well maximize your profits.
So the slip rates are per the foot of the slip then, for long-term leases? Okay.
That's how,
Okay.
if I can comment, that's how it's done in St. Pete. I have a 40-foot boat down there, I pay for a 45-foot slip.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard, however, I think that there should be some grandfathering over time
St. Pete.
to ease that additional burden.
And that's something that we'll do, not Nicole, she's designing it.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
But, yeah, definitely want to make sure that, everybody has a home and everybody can get, a good deal on it. We're not planning on shoving 35-foot boats and 50-foot
Nicole, I remember you bringing up additional parking as one of the goals. And I see the future parking garage on the one mock-up. Kind of what is the timeline as far, and is that going to knock out all of the existing parking if that does move forward?
Yeah, so I think it's in a feasibility phase right now, right? So it's still being vetted, and they're, overall, we've provided some ideas already from the marina side on what type of, you know, where it should not be, but yeah, it is a part of our project.
Okay, got it.
So during the director's report, I can give you a report on
Awesome.
what the city's doing
Okay.
with that.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh,
Let me make a comment, since we're talking about parking, I'd like to make a comment about that. With the kiosk being upland, we're talking, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're losing 50 parking spots. Approximately, this new design, we're right around 50, plus or minus a few,
Yes, I think it's 41.
okay? Which is about 13% of the parking we have right now. It's gonna be a challenge. I mean, taking one spot away hurts. You know, taking 41 away hurts a lot. But I understand what you're trying to achieve there, and I can appreciate that. We had, and I do not recall why it was taken away, or we had the temporary parking on the causeway for quite some time. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. Jeff, yeah, I'm 40 years, you're only 18, sorry. They allowed us to park on the causeway, and that was the solution. It worked very well. I think they got some complaints from residents across the water having to look at cars instead of grass. So it just occurred to me this morning, it came back to me, it's like, well, that may be a temporary solution while we bridge between my new marina with less parking and a parking garage in the marina. So that's something that we should look back into. I know that there's a reverter clause or something that all along that swath of the causeway, if it's not used for just a causeway, then it may be taken away from us or something to that effect. I don't know the exact nomenclature of the fine tune.
dinner cruise is
It
going
was
on.
done, I'm sorry?
Dinner cruise is going under the bridge, and your boats, you could see they were stocking up your boat, and there'd be a stream of people over the little bridge, ducking behind the marina
Pedestrian
there.
or the bike bridge.
Now we have a pedestrian bridge.
Yeah.
And we knew that whole stream of people was heading towards your boat to, because there's no parking there.
So-
Back in the day when they could still park on the causeway, is what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
it was put in just for season, and then it ended up being year-round for a while, and then it went away altogether. And I unfortunately can't remember why it was taken away from us, other than the fact that they just got complaints, and it wasn't, it was never made a real parking lot. It was just park on the grass.
Environmental.
So that's something we need to look at.
I know it's DOT right away, so you
Right.
have to get their permission. So
Right.
I don't know.
Well, if we go back into temporary, we're building a garage, we've redone the marina, we've taken away parking
I
in anticipation of a garage, so,
Definitely something that needs to be looked into.
that would be a major solution. Or a major assistance in transitioning through all this. And it may also be useful during the construction of the marina, to have that additional parking. So you don't have workers coming in and, that are working on the construction crew having to park in our commercial spots.
Yeah,
Right. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you
Well, I
continue.
was just gonna continue.
Yeah, I had something else.
You had all tasked me at my request, more or less, to attend meetings with
Yes, we
them as
did.
a city representative, because I'm not in the sunshine, as all of you are. I've had one virtual meeting with them, aside from the meetings they called with either some tenants or the group, session they had. So because I am a tenant, I'm viewed as not a city representative, and, not the entity, but they have to, I requested again and again and again, and the last meeting we had was with the city manager, and basically, he said, yeah, you should meet with them, and then Jeff respectfully said, well, we gotta have some closed door time. So, I haven't met a lot, but they've been very, we have had a dialogue. I met with a lot of the charter boat captains early on, and got their requests, and I brought them. And I think they were reiterated at the small meeting we had with a few of the operators, that the number one thing that they wanted was location, to be, where their slip is now, that's what they wanted to keep, because everybody knows that all the traffic flow comes from the west, all the pedestrian traffic flow comes from the west. The idea of the consultant is that it'd be better to group them together and create this fishing village, And that's their idea on it. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that I presented everything I could. The second thing was fixed docks. All the commercial boats wanted fixed docks because that just works better for operation. We had talked about this in a meeting, in one of the meetings, and I brought the idea up in June, and then in December, he thought it was his idea, but to double wide the pedestrian walkway by putting a fixed dock adjacent to the seawall and moving all the kiosks to the seawall and having this nice wide swath to walk along. That's not how things are done today, I guess. And the main thing is, and I'll let them comment on this, or whatever, you really got to tell these other people why we can't do the fixed dock. It's a matter of the utilities and floodplain and so forth. And I understand it all, and I think what they're going to do is they're going to create something that looks and will work for everybody. I've seen it in other marinas where there's floating docks. I've seen it in Key West where there's floating docks and the fishing boats are there. It's going to be a little different than what we have now, but I just want you all to understand that we pressed that, Mike pressed that, and we're not coming up with what we'd like to see. I wanted to see fixed dock at my dock, and I think that may be in the plan there. We're still working on that. The other thing they wanted was bait and ice to be near their boats. And I think that they were willing to possibly go with the communal ice so they could keep the bait freezer and a cleaning station and have that fixed dock and a step down. It just works better for them to be able to touch the people walking by, so to speak, as opposed to having this disconnect of a walkway. But there's going to be wayfinding and so forth and encouragement. Nicole's from Islamorada. She's a water girl. Whenever she sees a dock, she runs down that ramp and gets in that dock. But our typical tourist from Ohio or Iowa is going to be a little intimidated to go down the dock until they're actually, we're not supposed to do that unless we're going on the boat. But if they're invited and that becomes, part of the whole experience, walking the docks, that we want you to come down and walk along close to the boats. If we can encourage you to do that, then it could be a positive thing. As far as the location goes, it'd be great to keep everybody where they are. That would make everybody real happy. But I think if you keep all the boats in the same order that they're at, that's going to be the next best thing. And if all the fishing boats are one place, and you create this vibe for charter boat fishing, that that could be an improvement. Everybody's going to still think that their location is where that's what I bought this thing, or I've been here for 50 years, and it's not fair to move me off to the east. But I understand the logic, and you need to speak to them a little more about that, but you're really going to have to create this synergy that it's a better than it is now. That the fishing boats that are farther west will stay farther west in that group. So they get, the first ones and so forth. But I need you to reinforce that, what you're doing, and come up with more renderings on how it's really going to look as opposed to just samples of what other people have done.
Yeah, we do have renderings in here
Okay?
showing some of the activity. And yeah, if you think of this as a multi-tiered walkway, so right now the way we have this shown is that there are gates on the docks that go out to the recreational side, so the commercial side will be open unless if the city chooses not to. Not to allow full-time access. That could obviously be gated to part-time, depending on comfort level. I know right now it is not gated, the commercial side, so that's where we've got this. And so if you have this perimeter dock, it's going to be just a couple feet below. The floating dock changes with the tides. At high tide, it's going to be just a couple feet below the main dock. And so you will have this multi-tiered walkway effect where you have all of the passengers on the docks, but also passerby. Anyone that wants to walk the docks, and so that'll help activate that area as well. And at the request of the tenants, we did show the ferry slips at the far east end of the marina so that people would walk the full length of the marina. That can obviously be evaluated in more detail throughout the design phase, as well as specifically tweaking the exact locations and sizes of each slip and what order they come in. But we're generally trying to be as efficient as possible in the marina layout. We already have to extend these down a ways to allow these boats to get in and out of their slips, but we can You know, so we sized the slips in these areas, both based on what the commercial operations need, but also to try to minimize the additional extra dock length that we need in those areas. But there is always room for a little tweaking.
You know, with regard to the use, you create this vibe for the fishing village, you know, these are all the fishing boats, and somebody retires and they sell their slip, but they say they sell their slip because that's how it works. You basically buy my business and you get the slip. And then for a fee, if they want to change the use of that, currently, they come in and pay 1 year's rent, and now they can bring a different kind of boat in. Are we going to restrict the use of those slips to
That's
be
something
strictly
that's-
fishing boats? These are, we've got 12 or 14 or 18 or whatever it is.
That's been something that's brought to me, and, you know, it's probably something that's gonna be restricted. If you have a fishing business, you're gonna stay a fishing business. But like I said, that's just preliminary.
I'm sorry, Michael, you know you don't have a microphone.
Sorry, Susan. So, I mean, that's something that we're just gonna have to look into to see what we do in those instances.
Well,
So,
we need to kind of decide that before you spend all this money building a fishing village and it turns into a couple of,
well, sure, but I'm just saying that this was brought up to me last week, Phil, so,
I understand, I mean, there's
Yeah.
more to it.
yeah, there's a lot to it.
There's a whole lot more to it, I know,
Yes.
and I'm gonna be at more meetings
Yeah,
to fine tune, you know, because you know, I wanted to be involved as early on as possible because they've contracted with a, you know, request for proposal that says we're gonna do so many mock-ups, and then from there, it starts getting more expensive. And I'm trying to save some by getting, you know, getting involved earlier, because there's gonna be, those kind of questions have to be answered. You're gonna spend all this money making this, you know, fishing hub village, and then now we got a parasail boat in there, it doesn't make any sense at all. You know, unless if that's the master plan, then this is a fishing area, it's gotta be a fishing boat, and we wanna maintain a certain number of charter boats, you know, in Clearwater Beach, because we're known for it. You know, people are coming as a destination because of that, and for the head boats. You know, for the mix that's there, we've gotta keep that, so, you know, 20 years down the line, I can see it's all just a mishmash again.
yeah,
And
well,
we gotta
that's
make sure
why you
that's
really have to think about it.
planned into it.
If it's a fishing, boat, it stays a fishing.
Okay,
That's why I said it really needs to be thought about, because if you're a fishing boat, then you need to stay a fishing boat.
right,
If you're a parasail, you stay a parasail. And the same thing with people buying bigger boats. Well, what if I want to bring in, you know, a 50-foot fishing boat? Well, you're a 40-foot slip.
well,
So you're going to be limited.
trade with somebody or whatever.
So,
This reminds me of like zoning limits.
What's that?
This is a community.
I'm sorry, are you okay, Phil, or?
Oh, sorry, Jeff Walker, Senior Professional for Construction Services Group. It's like a community, a neighborhood, and we could have some like zoning restrictions for different slip areas.
No, my point is, we're gonna create this, we're gonna rearrange people, and 20 years from now,
Right.
it's gonna be a big mix-up again anyway, unless it's carved out in stone, that this is always gonna be fishing boats, that we wanna mandate that we're gonna have so many fishing boats available for the guests of Clearwater and the residents of Clearwater to come to.
It's a very good point.
And,
Legal.
Don't you think you're kind of reading the future and saying this is what's going to happen? And if that doesn't happen, you're locked into something that now you can't, these have to be fishing boats. Well, nobody goes fishing anymore because of somebody that decided to put oil
just
wells
trying to
in.
guard
So-
against,
So you're,
the idea is that we're gonna displace a lot of fishing boats from the west end, where they feel like they get a lot more walk by than they would be toward the east. But if we create this synergy and this vibe that really attracts things and becomes a very cool thing and looks very modern, then they're gonna get the bonus of that, and they're gonna fit into that. I'm just saying, I don't wanna see a parasail boat or, you know, over time, you know, when things happen, if
Five
there's not a demand for it anymore, then we start shrinking a little bit, but I just,
5 years of poor fishing and half these fishing boats go out of business and the city is restricted from putting parasailers or somebody else that's still offering a product to the people, because whether Fish Commission puts limits on the fish that they can bring in, or just because the business suddenly dies off, you're talking about locking them into, this slip has to be a fishing boat, whether there's fishing boats out there to make money or not.
There'll have to be a clause that the city can.
Well, okay, I just don't want it written in stone
all right, well.
that this is the way it's gonna be,
That's more,
because we don't know what the next person business is
I
gonna
agree.
be.
I agree.
So,
But at the
okay.
same time, next year, we don't want a parasail right in the middle of the fishing.
And
Well,
we don't want
You could sink
to
all those
have
parasail
all
boats as
four
far
boats
as I'm concerned
eventually,
anyways,
that's
but
who could afford to buy out a
won't
fishing
get me
boat.
up there.
And now we're not offering fishing to the guests, to the visitors of Clearwater Beach.
Right, no, I don't want the fishing boats to
So,
go
I mean,
away.
I understand you need to have some flexibility in there.
Yeah.
But the intent should be, we're gonna maintain at least this number of fishing boats so that we can satisfy the demand for that here. They come to Clearwater Beach, they don't go somewhere else.
And that was the intent of looking at this. We did look at groupings, and that's why you'll see that the tour boats and the sport, and the water sports and the sightseeing and even the larger dinner cruise boat that is on that side, like they're all grouped in the yellow category. That's a very broad category because there is some room to mix things through. But if you think about it, how many 100-person fishing boats can one community sustain? And so that's kind of where we thought, like, how many 130-foot dinner cruise boats does this marina plan to have in addition to what's there? And so the idea is
Just one?
the idea is that there is a balance now that mostly works, and there's a little flexibility to shift within those balances, and that's, we're trying to plan for the long term, but you're right, we can't pick exactly what it's going to look like in 20 years, but we know fishing is popular, and we know that a lot of people take the 4 to 8 person boats out, and so we want to make sure that there are slips for that. And,
Likewise, we have
I
enough boats
guess.
going out through sunset right now.
yeah, I
Right.
mean, maybe it'll be smoggy in here and no one will want to see.
Never, never.
I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on location is that, you were saying moving from the west end to the east end. Most of those, a good portion of those fishing boats are actually located in almost exactly the same spot. The smaller boats have shifted from the west end of the building to the east end of the building. So we're not talking about taking boats off Coronado and putting them at the far east end of the marina. We're talking about a couple 100 feet max shifting them. And so we are trying to keep everyone as close to where we can possibly keep them by also creating these atmospheres in these communities. And so that was the intent, and we can continue to discuss that
Right.
through design, for sure.
Can I ask one question? When in this process, perhaps it's this construction plan at the end of the year, when in this process does it become apparent that this many boats have to vacate for this period of time and this many for that period of time? When does that get laid out?
Well, the exact schedule won't be, and so there's a construction manager at risk RFQ that's going to go out soon. Once they're selected and they're on board, that's really when that will get further defined, is when they can provide input.
So that's a next year item, I guess.
It's months down the road, at least, before we're going to have that open dialogue, but we are looking at phasing in groups currently as part
Right.
of schematic design, and so we will, the exact durations really needs to come from the contractor, but we are doing estimates, and one of the things that the floating dock opportunity really allows us is that we have these locations that we can run the utilities onto, and then we can run them through the docks, so that we can locate the new utilities in, like the new transformers in a new location, run all of that conduit before we take any of the other stuff offline.
Do you even know yet if you'll move east to west or west to, in other words, boats on the east side will be the first to have to relocate, or boats on the west side will be the first to relocate? Is that even known yet?
Really, it's somewhat of that is means and methods. Like, yes, we will have, the city and the design team have heavy input. What we've looked at so far, I think it makes the most sense to start from the west and move east. That'll keep your fuel dock and your pump out open as long as possible.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
will allow you to keep your existing docks. It'll allow you to keep this dock and this dock in place, and we could do this area here, then boats can move there, and then this one could come out, boats, so this boat, when this is vacated, all the slips will be occupied over here, and then you'll build over and you'll do that fuel dock last.
Will we lose the fuel dock for some period of time?
There will
There's a
be,
transition?
there will be some downtime for the fuel dock. It would be complicated to do like dispensers on land for someone to pull up to, but there's something we could that's something we could discuss on like a single point location, but to have it, it's probably gonna be a couple of months.
Have fueled boats.
Yeah, and
Places
so,
that use a fueled boat that
Right.
goes around, so that could be a short term.
sure.
So I had another question too. So if the marina's full and the slip count's not gonna change dramatically or at all, then obviously you're gonna be displacing boats. Where are those going in the short term?
We have not discussed that in detail yet, but yeah, I think the focus of the commercial operations, keeping them at or very close to the marina was a priority that I understand. You know, there were some discussions of a mooring field. I don't think that's planning to move forward. So, you know, when we get to the recreational side, that'll have to be
Because all the
some
marinas are full,
discussions.
you know, so
No, I'm aware, yeah.
that's, yeah, not gonna be a simple solution.
Yeah, we've talked about potentially bringing in some temporary docks. I mean, where, is everyone going to be accommodated with full utilities? Maybe not, but, you know, there could be opportunities to bring in some rental barge floats and have at least locations for everybody to tie off. But we're very early in those discussions right now.
I've had the same kind of questions, and what it comes down to is they're gonna design a marina, and then we're gonna figure out how we're gonna get it built. How we're gonna keep everybody in business while the marina is being built.
Right.
I'd like you to speak more about the floating docks. Let everybody know why it's gotta be floating, why all the regulatory agencies don't wanna see fixed docks anymore. If you could give a little more, because you know more about that than I do. I think that they need to hear that, because every commercial tenant wanted fixed docks, except one. And,
Yes, so it's actually, there is, the primary reason, well, there's two primary reasons for a floating facility, aside from the fact that we were hired to design a floating facility. So, you know, that was always the plan, and that was what was conveyed to us. And so, floating docks are state-of-the-art, they're resilient, they have, you know, they adapt with the tide changes, and that is point number one. Point number two is that there is an aging seawall that lines the perimeter of this project that is not part of this project. And the city has a seawall ordinance in place that when that wall has to be replaced, it needs to be over 18 inches taller than it is now. And so to take 3 isolated locations and design those platforms so that they could be doweled into and raised at a later time, we were even going to locate the piles further waterwards so that it can be saw cut clean, you know, when that new install comes. So it's like, the floating dock layout is very adaptable to the future conditions, whereas if we were to design a fixed boardwalk, would it be at the existing elevation? Would it be at the future elevation? Would it be against the wall, and would you cut it back later to install the new one? Seawalls are installed directly waterward of the existing wall. You can't really replace them in their exact footprint without extreme damage to the upland in that process. And so that is one of the biggest challenges of this project, is to make sure that we're setting this up so when that project happens in the future, this marina is still just as usable as it was then. And so, and I guess third is the utilities and phasing of utilities. It's critical that this project has utility service to the boats, you know, at least to a majority of the boats throughout this process. And right now, all of the utilities run to the north end of the sidewalk, and there are eras of utilities piled on each other there, and really the only way to run those utilities landside is to remove some of that stuff and put that back in, which would take large segments of the marina offline. And so an alternative to that was mentioned is to run the utilities under the boardwalk area that Phil was describing, but in a high water event, you know, that wall is only 4 feet above NAVD datum. In a high water event, those utilities would submerge, and that typically damages the electrical system, which is the most expensive utility that you put out on the docks. And so what we've come to so far is that the floating docks were what the city always envisioned. They were They're adaptable, they're a more sustainable option than a fixed dock structure. A timber boardwalk type structure has a much shorter service life than the floating docks. So if you're looking for a 30-year service life or more, then it would probably need to be a fixed structure, which a concrete structure, which would be more expensive. And then the seawall concerns, trying to plan for a major future project without having to redo what was just done.
The other thing I was thinking, so I can't visualize where this 100-foot, obviously that's a clearway for the boats. I can't picture where that turns, but I do know I kept a sailboat there myself, and it's a long distance to the homes on the other side. Spending all this money to put all brand-new floating docks, why wouldn't we extend where we can and add slips? Because there's a shortage of slips, and that's not going to end. So maybe that's all been answered, but I haven't been here, so.
I'm sorry, which 100 are you talking about? Are you talking about here?
So if you look at this, there's a lot of room between here and the waterfront properties over here.
And
Why
further
would
out to
this
the
not get
south.
extended here and here and maybe here? There, I can see why not, but.
Yep,
if
so
you're
that.
spending that much money, adding a few more slips would be inconsequential, I would think.
So the dashed line here, that represents the limits of the city-owned submerged boundaries.
I got you.
So you would have to get a submerged land lease from the Department of Environmental Protection.
Gotcha.
And then the maintaining slip count is also because if you increase slips, it opens you up to a more stringent permitting process. And this marina already requires quite a few variances from every
Yeah, that's fine.
every entity, so.
Like an obvious question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and probably one I should have hit on earlier, but the decision to maintain within the city's submerged land lease and maintain the same slip count are primarily environmental permitting strategy
Right, okay.
to make this marina permittable.
Size, you say you have a vessel out there?
Pardon?
You have a boat out
I
there?
used to, yeah, I used to have a sailboat.
How big is the vessel?
It was 37 foot, it was a catamaran.
That, the area that they're encroaching on, the current marina is probably 100 feet or more to the north of that, the perimeter of the marina. And something I've mentioned to them that, you know, it gets quite a bit shallower as you move that way, and I didn't know what your experience was. I've got a boat up there now as well, but I draw 6 feet and I turn up a lot of mud when it's low tide and I come and go.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I think it gets worse as you go farther south.
It
And
does.
that's something that's gonna have to be,
Yeah.
I haven't done any soundings yet out there, I'm gonna get my small boat out there and,
We have bathymetry.
have you? Okay, the low tides just won't.
Yeah, gotcha, that's a good point, too.
I wanted to get a better understanding of the kiosk that will be replaced, I'm supposing. Are they gonna be on this walkway here, the lower one?
So
Are they
the
still gonna-
kiosks, while permitted by the city, were never permitted by environmental agencies, and they don't recognize them as overwater structures. Any overwater structure, if we could get it permitted, would be, have to be designed to the Florida Building Code for a V-zone condition, which is a very stringent condition. We are looking to try to replace the fuel dock building out there, but even moving location, we see some challenges with that. So the direction has been to locate the kiosks upland behind the seawall so that they are not an overwater element. And so that's, these are a couple of sketch renderings here where we were talking about this kiosk mall type scenario where there's a series of kiosks. It creates very active energy, and these would be rented by the tenants. And then if not all of them are rented, then they could be vendors. You could get a lemonade stand or a t-shirt shop or whatever, vendor you would like to see in there that complements the rest of the upland development.
So they'd be facing the boats now?
Yes, so they'd be located up in this area here, and we pushed them back some to widen this sidewalk, and to, and again, this is very early in design, so these could be grouped in smaller groups or larger groups, or, depending on what's needed, but that's the idea, is that you would walk up Coronado, you would see boats, and they would have their signage still on the docks, and then walk over to the one that they're going to purchase.
So this is
Their
where we're
tickets
losing
then.
the parking spots?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Majority, there's a few other spaces.
Yeah, there are a few spaces that are like up here that we are losing because of code landscaping requirements for the city. So there is a potential to get a variance to not lose a few of those, but that is a process that we'll have to initiate at the BPRC meeting.
Another question I had, I was asking that because I thought it would be a very narrow walk on this boardwalk with the kiosks, people trying to get on the boats, and then people just trying to pleasure walk. Is there going to be any type of like railing at all to prevent people from flopping over, or is it just going to be
Good question.
pretty much open?
There are lots of opportunities of how to handle edge protection. There is no code requirement along the water. It would be implemented at the city level. But we've seen anything from raising the seawall cap. This project does involve some seawall repairs, and one of them is to replace just the cap area. So there is some opportunity to increase that height a little bit and make a curb, or to, sometimes they'll do like a lighted bull rail. Though you can also do railings, but railings really separate the waterfront, and so we tend to look for something that's low level, that's more of just a visual. Sometimes it's even paint that separates it, but those are discussions we haven't initiated yet.
Because we have a lot of kids that go on these tour rides too. And then my third question that I had was about the fishing village. I'm not a fishing woman per se, but I was thinking about with all these cleaning stations, all the birds that are going to come, do you have anything to cover these stations or clean them or just prevent birds from flocking in that area?
I mean, when fish are being cleaned, that's primarily the time where you'll see a lot of that activity. There's, the fish, once cleaned, are not supposed to go into the water. So that's one of the things that throwing them into the water is frequently what the birds start coming into. So after you're done with them, you rinse them off and it cleans it up. But there currently are the same number of fish cleaning stations. We're showing one per boat right now out there.
It brings up a point about the railing, and that's something I was about to ask you. When we raise the seawall, how does that affect the ingress to the floating dock?
There would be minor modifications at that area to ramp up or to adjust, so.
New seawall, or bring the whole promenade up, or, I know it's not part of
Yeah.
the plan right now, but.
Again, we're very early, we're looking at some FEMA maps to do. I mean, there are multiple other projects that are not directly related to us, but are also related to us, and we're doing some research into what options we might have to help some of those future projects as well, and one of them is the seawall replacement.
The fact that we're going to be raising a seawall there, and there's your floating dock entrance is here, but, I mean, the seawall comes down there, or?
No, the wall would not come down. The seawall ordinance is in an attempt to protect the water, to protect the land side from floodwaters, but we will have a long-term and a short-term solution at every one of the access locations.
The other thing with regard to a railing or something like that just occurred to me, this will help with the disconnect, or the potential disconnect between the promenade and the floating promenade, and that is to design a brochure holder down low that's not in sight line. This is done at John's Pass, because the boardwalk is there and the boats are down and another level altogether. And if each boat, each tour boat, each fishing boat could have just a brochure pocket right directly in front of their boat or adjacent to whatever, so somebody walking along could pick up a brochure from that, as opposed to having to go find their kiosk. And it would make it much better for them to accept that disconnect if they could at least put something about what they're doing in a pamphlet, in a brochure that's right in front of their boat. It could be the same with the charter boats. It was designed uniformly all along And, to make it look good, aesthetically, we want it to look good, but we want to provide something that would be very useful to the commercial operators since they're being somewhat separated, even with wayfinding and all those things that are even better, that'll make it even better. So, if you can figure that out. I mean, I'd like to, and all the tour boats would love to have some information right in front of their boat, instead of making them go find which kiosk it is, which they will have to do eventually anyway. But that can, help them with their decision-making.
Sure. Yeah. And that all falls into kind of that wayfinding and directional stuff that,
The last thing I had was that, it was mentioned, kind of in passing that, well, once we get this stuff done, then the fishing boats and anybody that needs to have ice or coolers or bait freezers can put them out on the dock maybe, or, it'll be big enough for you to do that. But, it's not gonna be permitted. And so, I spoke to Jeff about this. We really need to have this plan where everything is accommodated. And if somebody wants to put a bait freezer or an ice machine on a dock later on and then they get away with it, that's fine. But if it's not going to be something that is easily permitted, then we need to have a solution for that for all tenants going into this thing. I know there's limited space upland, but I have to have freezer and cooler space for my larger dinner boat. We talked about, swapping out the other boat, and that boat is completely contained. I mean, I've got everything built into that boat, so I don't need them. That's why it would be a better fit to move that one into this location. But the Starlight Majesty, I don't have that, and I need, it's a different animal. I need to have freezer and cooler somewhere close to the vessel, upland. I say upland, I say dockside, but upland, because it can't really be on the dock, I don't think, legally. So we've got to make accommodations for everybody that has that now. It's been, they've had it all these years, and we need to figure out how we can solve their problems on the upland side. And if that means giving up a little bit more in a parking or in another building or whatever, but all these things got to be, before it's finalized, it's okay, we're done, good, go build it. We got to have all these things addressed, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. I talked to them. I said I did make an accusation that they've been hired to come in and take this is a place for a marina, so build a perfect marina. But you got to realize that this is a place where a marina is actively working, and people's livelihoods, are going to be affected over a year's time, and they're going to have to make accommodations to make sure that nobody goes out of business while we're doing this transition. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And I just want to make sure that we accommodate everybody, that we have a plan to accommodate everybody instead of, I get this lot, build it and they will come, or we'll build it and we'll figure it out later. We need to figure it out ahead of time so it runs as smooth as possible, as efficiently as possible, and is the best possible scenario for everybody affected by it.
and we have looked at storage in the building as an option. It won't cover 100% of everyone, but our really only other option upland is to impact parking in order to build other structures. And my understanding is that that is not desired, so.
Not desired, but, if we can get some assurances the parking garage is coming.
I was gonna say the parking garage,
again,
the parking garage would give a
That's,
good
that's what I'm saying, we gotta look at all these things and put that puzzle together where it's gonna work before, during, and after construction on all these different phases, and in the end, we've got the Mac Daddy best possible situation for everybody involved. With some, we're all making sacrifices. I'm losing my office out there. I'm gonna have to, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but, I've got a little more time to figure that one out, but I will. And I'm working with you on that, so just wanna make sure that we get all these things addressed. And each individual operator needs to probably say, this is what my needs are. Exactly, and then there's some give and take, they'll understand that there's only so much we can give, and we'll all have to work together to make it work. There's one last thing I'd like to bring up, and then I think you might want to open the floor to anybody else who may want to ask a question.
Yes,
But,
about to do that.
the acclimation, can you go back to the marina layout? Has anybody, I've only been on this board for a year, has anybody been here when they did the harbor marina? Okay, and is there any problem with boats docking in the harbor marina? With currents
Bad.
perpendicular to current? And the marina we have right now has pilings. When a boat comes in with a perpendicular current, they can lean up on that piling and they can pivot on it. You can't pivot on a concrete pole that's in the middle of a finger. They got to pivot on that little wheel or whatever they're gonna put in the corner, just saying that, I've mentioned this before, and I've been out of town, I sent them an email last night. The eastmost dock, we have perpendicular slips to a strong current. I was concerned about the fuel dock being that way, but they pointed out that the fuel dock's gonna be 150, 200 feet farther south, which will take it out of most of the current. But the slips that are located, to the north and east, those 80-foot slips, boats are gonna have a hard time getting in and out of there. We have giant steel pilings for the Starlight Majesty to pivot off of. And, it's something I was hoping somebody was here with the Harbor Marina when they did that, and they didn't come up, and now we've got all these boats coming into a perpendicular current and trying to dock at flood tide, and boats get banged up, the concrete, docks have been damaged. Squid's Dock Service goes out there all the time to repair things, and it's something that needs to be addressed. I suggested they do side ties in that area and move the transient docks, the blue ones that are toward the south, possibly move those up. They're the marine engineers and architects, and I appreciate their education and understanding of everything, but from an operation standpoint, that's gonna be a problem for boats coming and going. With that type of, you got a concrete pile with the floating dock around it, if there's no place to pivot, then go ahead.
Yeah, so to address that directly, I have a client with a 44-foot sailboat that's a full keel, big, huge, heavy boat, and we can't take it out for a sea trial when somebody wants to buy it unless it's slack tide. So we have an hour window to get that boat in or out because it cannot be taken out of that slip when the current's flowing, either direction.
Where is that boat located?
The harbor marina, the
Oh, okay.
downtown
Yeah.
marina.
Okay. And good to know, and we are well aware of the currents in the basin, and we've had several hours of discussions that are not implemented currently in this plan because this had to be done in advance. And so, yeah, noted, and we will be looking at currents, we will be looking at structures, we will be working at navigation in the design phase of this project. So right now, the critical path item is a general approval of the master plan. When I say general, I mean general locations blocked out, whether it's perpendicular, side tie, a couple of slips get swapped, things like that. That's all going to be, this is going to continue to progress over the rest of this year. And so we'll be doing more coastal modeling, structural design, and elements to address. And a lot of those comments are things that we'll be working through in that. So we have listened and we have taken to heart several of the things. We just need to get a little further in design.
As I said that email, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. The farther south you go, the less the current will affect you, but it's strong right where those boats are. It's very strong still.
Yeah,
And flip-flopping that would help, side tie with another one, and there's different possibilities. And that's where I'd like to sit down and go through, okay, well, can we do it this way? No, it's because this, work together.
Well, yeah.
I'm trying to make sure that I don't look at, from my boat, look and watch, I told him not to do it that way. That guy just creamed the side of his boat.
yeah, and there are center piles. There's a lot of things that aren't shown at this stage and at this level of detail. So, side tie is an extremely, extremely inefficient way to provide slips for a marinette. But if that is the only option there, then that's something we'll
I
certainly
understand that.
evaluate. So, yeah, so just give us some time, please, to work a little bit further so we can evaluate some of your comments.
Like I said, I just see, I cringe when I see a boat come in and damage because they're trying to do something that the dock wasn't designed for. And you'll have the same thing with the larger fishing boats. We talked about doing some sort of fendering system for them because their gunnels and their rub rails are going to be way above that floating dock. And any approach to that needs to have a wooden pile to guard them against puncturing, their side hull. You get a fiberglass boat that comes in, hits one, yeah, there's fenders and stuff. You hit it hard enough, they can put a hole right in it. And it's happened in the Harbor Marina. Boats have, put gaping gases in their fiberglass hulls because it's not designed that way. It's not meant to be that way. It's meant to be just rubbed along lightly. So enough said on that.
So no
Okay.
one from the board is
Excuse me?
going to these meetings?
We haven't yet.
No?
I think the only thing we decided was that if only one member from the board is permitted to attend the meeting, that Mr. Henderson was going to go. But
It was open last meeting in December, it was open as to whether or not
We
anyone
left it
besides Phil could attend.
we left it open because I thought I saw in the minutes that I put forward that he does, and I thought I put
Yeah.
forward
Well, we were gonna
that
do
we
it
wait
until-
to decide whether we can all attend. We would all like to attend those meetings.
Yeah.
What was decided was that I would, in the interim, because you need to get some guidance on that.
Exactly.
Sunshine and so forth.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's been followed through or not since that's gone, but the resolution was for me to do it until this meeting, and we would address it at this time.
Right.
So I'm happy to, because I've had one virtual meeting with them outside of, you know, I've had a couple of conversations with Jeff, and I think they know that I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, I'm just trying to make sure that it's the best for all.
Absolutely, and feedback is certainly welcome, but the interim design meetings in general are for the design team and general updates, and so that'll be direction from the people we're contracted to make the decisions on who else attends them.
I just,
So we're happy to have initial discussions and stuff too, but
I'm just.
some meetings are for procedure.
Right, it sounds like I'm taking up your resources, but I'm really trying to save the city's resources, because if it's not the way I think it should be, my job is to stand up and say, I'm a 40-year operator here, I don't know everybody, but they have a lot of experience, but this is not gonna work. And if you wanna build it that way, you go ahead. But some things aren't gonna work as they are. Conceptually, overall, you're looking for an overall basic, we're on the right track approval today. I think that if it's possible, I'm not sure what the rules are for this board, but if there's anybody in the audience who wants to speak to this agenda item before you make your approval, that.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I've been waiting to
I'm
move on to
sorry.
that for a second.
I'm sorry, who's running the meeting?
let's-
Can we
let's
let
move
the
in.
chairman run the meeting?
Can I? And I was
You're
about to.
calling
Phil-
people from the audience to come speak.
I was
You're
about to.
riding over him. I'll let you go now.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Wade. Yeah, Phil, I've just been kind of waiting for you to get through your list there, Phil. Thank you. At this point in time, are there any questions from anyone else in the audience that you want to ask of Nicole? Yes, sir.
Well, it's not much of a
You'll have to,
observation.
sir, no, you'll have to step up.
Yeah, so you can be heard in the
You
microphone.
folks may remember, I gave y'all, Mike Colby, president of the Clearwater Marine Association. I
Okay.
gave y'all a presentation a little over a year and a half ago.
Yes.
That project now, which was electronic logbook reporting, is now mandatory as of March 1st, 2022. And this is, since this board member mentioned fish cleaning, the dynamics of what our charter fleet, which are federally permitted charter boats, all of us, all 22 of us, we are now under some different mandates. And the fish cleaning stations, as we've outlined here on this, essentially what we have is two promenades. We're going to be moving large groups of people down this floating promenade behind all of these boats. And our mandate is to offload fish within 30 minutes of arriving dockside. And once that's accomplished, my guess is about a year from now, you're going to see ramped up dockside intercepts by NOAA Fisheries and FWC. Those intercepts will be used to verify catch and location data tracking. It may get as high as 50%. Right now, it's only about 20. You've seen them at the marina. You've seen the FWC creel surveys. So I'm envisioning fish cleaning stations set up, to the north along this dock. Now, we're required to pass fish off and line them up so the surveyors can get to them. They'll be weighing, measuring, moving fish to the cleaning table, all at the same time we're moving large groups of people down this promenade. Now, I see a problem with that.
Why would you be moving large groups of people?
Well, if the ingress and egress is at an end and a middle, with everybody going to either tour boats or fishing boats, you've got people now moving directly behind where we're trying to prosecute complying with federal mandates on fish cleaning and stacking, along with everybody trying to get to another boat. I don't have that problem now with the drop-down dock. Those surveyors step down off the seawall and survey our fish on the drop-down fixed dock. We don't have to involve folks moving in and out through a gateway to interrupt that kind of process. So you know, the devil's always in the details. And these kind of things, while they, to an untrained eye, may not seem important, but we have to have those intercepts done quickly and efficiently. It's required by federal mandate. We cannot refuse the intercept. And it's all part of the data collection for catch and effort, CPU-y stuff that we talked about here when I made the presentation. So those are just little things outside, and notwithstanding the other issues of ingress and egress, a lack of turning basin area with the design. I mean, there's a lot of, as Phil said, I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover before we get to that comfort zone. But again, the fish cleaning, again, with a vessel here and a fish cleaning right about where that table is, we have,
The microphone.
could have a bit of an issue with how folks freely move up and down that floating dock. And you get a boat like her boat that'll come in with 300 pounds of fish. And right now, they keep them on the drop-down dock, and the surveyors are there, the weighing and the measuring and this, that, and the other. Now we're going to be accomplishing those things on a floating promenade. So I'm a little concerned about that. And it's something you might want to kind of stick back in your head here, along with some of the other concerns that you may have.
Sure. So I don't know what, if anything, you can say about it at this point in time, but Nicole and Mike, it's obviously a concern's got to be part of the process somewhere to think through.
What width are we envisioning now? I know it's master plan, but ballpark, the width of that floating dock at that location, and the fish stations are not encroaching into that width. They're actually overboard. They're hanging off the end, right?
Yeah, right now we're looking at a walkway width that matches the promenade width at the existing promenade width, so a 12-foot width. So,
pretty good size.
and like I said, not encroaching heavily. May I ask a question? Can you hang the fish, or does it have to be? Sorry, you probably have to
some
go.
of us hang them for display.
Sorry, you have to go back.
Some of us, some of us that are particularly proud of what we catch have hung fish. It's probably not a deal breaker if we can't. And you've all seen the activity now. Once fish counts are done, sometimes we'll line a fish right up along the seawall. But the advantage there is we're not interacting other people with our fish cleaning process.
Right.
I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Now you're going to be interacting folks that are trying to get from point A to point B with my fish cleaning process, and we don't do that now. So again, something that you might be mindful of, maybe some accommodation or design change or something.
Okay.
And again, liability is always an issue for me, and it's concerning. I don't want the general public, who may not be interacting with my vessel, who may want to interact with a vessel 100 feet that way, interrupting what I'm doing with my customers standing there. They're not going to walk around and get on the seawall and look down at me. We're all going to be crowded into this area. Now, admittedly, it may be 10 or 12 feet, but that gets pretty small when you're offloading several hundred pounds of fish. And you look at the head boats that we have, my God, they'll clean fish for 2 hours. And so again, some of the logistics of this, I understand floating docks, and I think that's why I asked Jeff to contact you if you wanted some development and application help from GOMA. Laura Bowie is the one you ought to talk to. I'm on the Business Advisory Council for the Gulf of Mexico Alliance. And we have huge portals of information on the development, the application, and use of floating docks to combat sea level rise, et cetera, et cetera. And they are a wonderful source of information with designs that they've looked at all over the Gulf of Mexico. And I know right now your folks are at Anderson's Marina in Panama City. And I believe they're designing something similar there. I don't know what their logistics problems are, But we're talking about Clearwater. And, but again, and it is changing. You're right about one thing. Floating docks are coming. They just got to be done right. If,
Is there a website for that?
yes, Gulf of Mexico Alliance.org. You can go into their resiliency teams. They'll give you, it's a huge information portal on resiliency of port communities around the Gulf, which I've worked on quite a bit with GOMA, and a good source of info.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was another gentleman, sir?
Well, my name's Mike Flannery, and yes, I do have a dock on Venetian Point, and I think you just covered the point. I'd like to get it with you later. You keep mentioning.
I got a parking ticket now.
I got a CDB cover for you. I just like to point out, we've talked a lot about it, sea level rise. We're saying it's higher, it's all these other things. It's not higher because they want a higher seawall. It's higher because the sea level is actually rising, and I'll tell you it's documented you can look it up at the St. Petersburg tide gauge. But particularly my kid came in recently and said, Dad, this dock was built, there's a catwalk 30 years ago, and it was this high above the water. Now we have barnacles. So it's happening, and it's happening faster. So it's good to do all the floating docks you can and make sure it's not like, well, I wish we didn't have to do that. It's better. I'm glad we thought about it early, and we have done something to make it as high as possible.
Thank you. Someone else back there, ma'am?
Hello, my name's Heather Hunsucker. I own The Real Deal, Real Deal Sport Fishing, HUNSUCKER. And I own Real Deal Sport Fishing in the marina, so I apologize, I'm not a public speaker, but I'm a business owner. And just a few points that I wanted to make. Definitely the idea of losing 41 parking spots is like insane to me, and also it just seems like with the aging seawall, and then that we need to do that eventually, and then we need a parking garage eventually, that we have this like big plan here, and we're making a plan before we're fixing things that need to happen for this plan to happen. So I just want to make sure, I know it's like not part of this, but that those things are very important and to make this successful, Another thing I wanted to say is, okay, what did I write here? Okay, so like when she was doing the slides earlier, and you see the picture of the people and the congestion by Coronado. I mean, I look at that picture and I see business. I'm like, and I'm part of the fishing boats that are being talked about moving down to the east. And it's like, what is going to draw people down there? I mean, our boats carry 6 people max. We might run twice a day if we have like 2 half days, but we're running offshore. So you're looking at 12 customers max that my boats carry. And the bait house, I mean, that bait house has a 50-person capacity to use the restaurant. They're full immediately. I mean, putting us smaller businesses like the private small charter boats down at the East End, how's that bringing tons of people down at the East End? I mean, how's that increasing the, people walking down to that way? Right now, people don't walk down there. They'll walk to the marina building and stop, and then go back. So that's a problem that should be part of this plan, how can you why would you I carried 12 people, why would you put me down there, maybe 12, most of the time 6, when you could put boats that are carrying like 100 people down there, that's bringing people down there. The ferry boats down there, that is helpful. If people ride the ferry, that's a growing business because the parking is such an issue. And then the other point I wanted to make, what Mr. Laughlin was saying about the changing of the businesses and the slips, I mean, personally, so I bought The Real Deal years ago, and then there was a dolphin tour boat right next door, slip right next to me, right? So he was sick of being in the middle. He had previously bought that from a fishing charter. he paid the fee, you know, to change it to a dolphin tour boat. Then I bought his business, I paid the fee to change it back to a fishing boat so I could put my other charter boat there. You know, I mean, to make it like a fishing community that it has to be fishing, I mean, man, you're really limiting business owners. You know, I mean, we're already doing that. We're already buying a business here and paying, you know, what we need to pay to change it out and everything. And everybody's doing that already. So I would say leave that up to the businesses to continue to do that. I mean, it's unique that we're all kind of mixed all up. I mean, generally the fishing charters are all kind of together. It just kind of ended up that way. But I mean, we are way over, like, where the start of this, like where the X is and the promenade thing. I mean, like that's where the fishing boats are starting. Like that's where the Dos Amigos is. That's the first one. So we look at this and we see, oh, we start at the end of the marina building and nobody's really walking. I mean, people walk down there, no offense, Mike, but not many people are walking down there because there just isn't a reason to walk down there right now. So I think that should be a main thought process on getting people to walk the full length of this marina. And I am also in favor of the fixed docks. So, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to have one quick question. Did you receive the survey?
Yes, the online survey, I did. And I was able to go to the first meeting. I was the only fishing charter that was able to go. They were like, only this many because of COVID, and there was a bunch of other charters that were not happy about that. They wanted to be involved. And we do have a few more now here today. It is tough because it's March, so most of them are fishing today. So, you know, but yes, I did do the survey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a general comment on this. These concerns obviously are critical, I think, and very important that they get voiced here in this forum. Obviously, we're not going to solve them here, but they are noted, they're logged. Patricia has them in the minutes, and I presume that it's all part of what you and Nicole and Michael have to struggle with, obviously, to balance all these things. But this is obviously a good opportunity to at least get these things into the record. So thank you. Is one more? Yeah, please.
Hi. My name is Suzanne Foster. I'm the owner of Gulfstream Fishing Vessels, and we have 2 U.S. Coast Guard inspected and certified vessels. We've been there for 47 years, and basically the fishing fleet has been there for 60 years, about 60 years, and they have virtually built Clearwater Marina. Bear with me, I'm not a very good speaker. So we feel, and all the charter fishing boats feel, that we need to stay in the area we are because it works. The fishing boats used to be at the west end, and they came around till just at the end. Well, they went further down past the marina. Now, if you move us down there in what we all call no man's land, nothing is going to attract the people to come. You saw where the crowds were right at the corner. It was real congested with people. That's right at the very west end where the tour boats are. And nothing really draws them down there. They moved some of the bigger fishing boats down there a long time ago, and he suffers, and there's a couple of other boats that have really suffered since moving him down there. And my suggestion would be is to leave us where we're at in that very area and put some of the tour boats down there to attract people. And a lot of them are like, what are the little ski-doos or whatever, and they come and go a lot. So they could be pushed down at the other end, at the east side, and get some of those that have a lot more traffic coming and going down at that end. And wind, tides, and the currents are really going to affect us. I don't know much about floating docks, but I can't see floating docks with wind, tides, currents, and all these boats coming and going. That's something to think about. As far as the seawall and the adding of 18-inch to what we already have, Yes, it's gonna bring up our boats a little bit too at the same time. But a lot of these boats we have a little higher profile on we got a 51 foot and then we got a 40 foot. And a lot of them are like a really low profile. And by the time, if I'm correct, they're gonna put a parking garage right at where you're proposing to put us, down in no man's land. Who's gonna see us? So if we have some of the bigger, he's down at that end, which helps because people do come past us. So that proves, and I've watched it for 47 years, that people come down about to the Marina building opening, and that's it. They go, oh, there's nothing down here. And they turn around and go back. And that's my biggest concern. Like I say, I don't know much about floating docks. We also bring a lot of corporate business. People come, they make corporate trips with big companies, and they charter us. I mean, they will call some of the other boats. We carry like up to 22, fishing 15, because that's the size we can put on our boat. And our second boat's a 40-footer. So we'll bring in corporate people, and then in turn, we can hire the other boats that carry just 6. So we can carry like 75 people, maybe, all said and done. But we really do need to be where we're at now, because it works. And just consider maybe moving some of these tour boats at this other end. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi there. My name is Nick Ress. I'm the manager at Salt Cracker Charters. Excuse me? RESS. Yep. I'm the manager at Salt Cracker Charters, which is actually the largest fleet of private charter boats at the time, or as of right now. I just want to echo on some things that were already brought up that I think are very important. First and foremost, above everything else, I'd like to propose that a way for not just the private charter boats, but every single business to stay right about where they are is extremely important. I know definitely for our business, a lot of consideration was taken into which business as they came. We actually passed on an opportunity to buy a business because it was not in our preferred location. So that's, and I know that a lot of other businesses have made the same considerations. I'd also like to point out that if congestion on the walkways are one of the main considerations of this upgrade, I don't see the floating docks with 3 entrances fixing that in any way. I see at times hundreds of people trying to walk down the same ramp at the same time. I like Phil's pointing out about the pilings to pivot off of, even on the west end of the marina, with a strong west wind or a strong east wind. That's kind of critical. I put over 1,000 hours on my boat every year. That's a lot of times in and out of that slip. So it's not always perfect timing weather-wise to get in and out of there. Losing the parking is gonna just be, that I think it's incredible that that's even an option. Also would like to point, the limited access to the meetings is, I feel pretty troublesome, but that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On that thought, and just out of the picture, I'm not asking you a question, I'm just adding to what you said further. On the bend there on Coronado, isn't there a beach parking lot?
Across the street.
Literally right across the street, that could be for periods of time commandeered maybe, sacrifice some parking for the beach? No? Crazy? Because, they're going out on the beach and they're laying on the sand and they're not, sure they come down and hopefully they spend money, but technically that parking's going to people laying on the beach and you could be sacrificing it for a short period of time.
Well, the marina parking lot is for marina business, so, to utilize that parking lot, you're supposed to be going to one of the businesses there. And I think, there's some people that are parking there and then going to the beach or going to do other things.
How is that monitored or dealt with?
That'd be parking does it, parking engineering. So, they're separate from us.
So as a suggestion, Jeff Kyrleber just opened up that new garage across from Pier 60 Hotel, and there are a number of city supposed reserved space in there. I forget the exact number, it's like 28, something of that
Down on
sort.
Pelican Walk?
No, I don't think it's Pelican Walk, it's across from the Wyndham, it's at the intersection of Coronado and Devon, I think that is. Right-
Oh, on the
right-
one
right
they
next to
just
Pier
built?
60, and yes.
Yeah,
that-
I don't know.
There
if
are
this-
there are a number of city specified spots in there. It's not a big number, but it's some in the order of 25 or 30. So my question is, why doesn't the city think about maybe making an arrangement with Jeff that these become marina business
Yeah, I mean,
spaces as well?
that's not a bad
Even
idea.
if it's just a temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
They're not gonna have customers if they can't park on the beach somewhere.
That's an option. I don't know about the city's
Yeah, it's
plan
just
with that garage or if they have
something new.
25 spots.
Yeah.
No.
And Mr. Anderson mentioned the ferry, the ferry coming and going is not only traffic, it's potential of, park off the beach, don't sit in beach traffic while you're waiting to get on the boat. You can park on the city and take the ferry over for $8 and they'll drop you right on the dock from your boat. And I think that would be a big thing to push too, to make up for some of those spots.
Absolutely.
Maybe even a discounted fare if you've got a reservation on a tour boat.
Yeah, well, the city councils, they're big on that ferry. We recently released the lien on Monoscus Crossing, and they want a ferry to be successful here, so, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think that's all.
Sorry, I had a question. Did you decide on who's gonna go to meetings?
We did not, and I was about to come back to that. Thanks, Patricia, because if we're done with input from the audience, thank you. I think we need to figure out how to resolve this question. I, for one, am very happy having Phil attend, but if there are others that want to attend some of these meetings,
Well,
How do
the
we
issue
do it?
is when you're working as a group like this, you have to have free range of discussions. And
Sure.
the city manager agreed with this, and it's not feasible to have, no offense to Phil, but, people that have vested interest attending all these meetings. So you have to have those free and open discussions.
well, I guess I understand that, so you have free, open discussions, but then there needs to be a mechanism where there's
And those-
frequent opportunity for Phil or somebody to
Yeah,
observe what's been
no, absolutely. I'm
arrived
just
at.
saying, every meeting it's not attainable. You can't have that.
Yeah, I understand
But
that.
the meetings that we've had, and we've already had three or four meetings with with some of the vested owners,
Right.
with the team, to
So what's-
discuss. And I know that, we've had limited space in those meetings, and, that's an issue.
So as this process goes on, what's a reasonable, alternative? Once a month to meet with Phil, or every couple of weeks, or what makes sense?
I think it really depends on what the meeting is. A lot of these meetings have been, outside of these meetings that, they've all been aware on coming up with this design so far. It's utility meetings, it's, like right now, I'm doing the boring samples, we've had meetings over that. So, we've had 3 meetings so far.
Right, but, yeah, Phil.
What we decided last meeting was I would take on that role until this meeting, when we decide what would go on from there. I think there is question as to the sunshine and could a voting board member attend a meeting like that without having to be advertised, and I thought we were gonna do some follow-up on that.
Only one.
One board member?
And it was Ed at that time, but
One member, only one member, and the harbor master's not there because he's part of this committee. No? Okay. So that's what you found out. You could do one member without advertising.
For any meeting?
I'm happy to let anybody else do it, you know, Mr. Laughlin has an interest in it. I have a
I
conflict of
just
interest.
applied for Social
I've tried to
Security.
demonstrate that
I'm retired. Yeah, I got nothing but time. Nothing but time.
I've tried to demonstrate that I'm here for the greater good, but I'm still being viewed as a conflict of interest and for my own personal gain or whatever, but,
Right.
and I can see that, you know, if I look at it from above, you've got to say, well, this guy's got a slip here, he's there for his own interest, and I am, to a point. But I've talked more about everybody else's issues than my own. But I understand it, and I'm happy to let somebody else do it, and I'll have conversations on the side, so I'm still,
So if
I think we've developed a rapport, and we'll still have some conversations, I don't have to be,
Right.
you know, over your shoulder, whatever, I just,
Yeah,
Is-
and I
is-
don't want
is
to,
the rest
I
of-
don't, as long as only one, it doesn't have to be a designated person, but I will volunteer to attend some of these meetings, and possibly somebody else would like to say, hey, if you can't go, let me know, and maybe I would go. We're hoping this is your last meeting, but we don't want to talk about the election. You know, sure, I'd like some backup, but I'm really serious. I'm fully retired now. I'm looking for new hobbies.
So if the rest of the board is okay, I'd suggest that as the solution for the time being, and,
Okay,
See
and
how it
then
evolves.
at any meeting, we can change that.
okay?
Do we need a motion for that?
No, I don't know, because it wasn't up to me to check, to see if you being a
Ex
ex
officio,
officio,
Right.
yeah.
that counts as being a member.
I can't understand, I'm
Can't
sorry.
vote.
If being an ex officio counts as being a member, I don't know if that affects.
Yeah, I'm not considering, there won't be very many meetings.
Okay.
That's what I found out. There will be a whole lot of meetings, but we, you know, I think, you know, I can communicate with them in an unmeeting, unofficial capacity, you know, whatever. I think they understand where I'm coming from, that I want to do the right thing for everybody. And I'm only trying to help, and I'm not trying to get in the way, but it may appear that way sometimes.
So Mike, when you have these meetings, you'll invite Mr. Laughlin, and we'll
Yeah,
proceed from there.
Oh, Jeff and Nicole usually,
Thank you.
Jeff and Nicole usually initiate the meeting, so we'll just add you to the,
All right, there we
just
go.
add your email address.
Okay,
It's done mostly through Teams.
and if it's core samples and things, I'll RSVP that I won't be able to make it, but
Yeah.
if it's like concerns with the people that,
Things we've
this-
heard
today.
I know
Absolutely.
expressed
Yeah.
concerns today, I'd love to
Great.
be there.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Excellent. All right.
does that need a motion, or I don't think I can
I
motion it
think we
since it's
just said
about
it
me.
doesn't need a motion, right?
Consensus.
Okay,
Okay. All right, so if we're done with that topic, I think we can move on to the next item on the agenda. Obviously, this is going to be an extremely complicated project for a long time.
Sure.
Yeah, Phil?
I think they were asking for some sort of approval from the board that you're on the right track. They're trying to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Certainly.
I might be, Nicole, were you asking for some sort of, were you asking for some sort of?
yeah, that's a information.
No?
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position to do that. Yeah, okay.
Good job.
Yep, and thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot more to come, it looks like, so good luck. So let's move on and talk about the next item on the agenda. Why are we getting feedback all of a sudden, Patricia?
Lean back.
Lean back? Like, go up against the wall, would it be better?
Like the chair and vice chair, we have nominations for chair.
Right. So we need nominations from members of the board for the chair position for 2022.
You don't need to be replaced, do you?
We have election every year according to
Right.
code.
Yes,
It's
but
time to
we
do
need
it.
to change?
He can be our nomination.
Can we nominate?
Yeah, I don't know why we would.
I'm happy to
Anybody
keep
feel that
doing
we
it
should
for you.
change?
That's worked well, so.
I think you're doing
Okay.
it.
I would nominate Ed
Thank you.
as staying as chairman.
Can we nominate Kevin to?
Now, Mike, Ed is no longer on the board.
Ed's not here.
Yeah.
Ed has resigned,
Right.
He's
resigned.
resigned.
Yes.
So I'm Mike.
Everybody
So
here,
I'll
there's
vote.
one
Mike
person
is around.
not here. Pataglia.
Oh, okay. All right. so-
Right now, Mike Groman is vice chair.
So for chairman, I nominate Ed. Does anybody second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor? All right.
I know it's hard to
Thank
vote
you.
when you're voting
Yeah,
for yourself.
it seems strange for me to run that part, but so be it. We also need a nomination for vice chair for next year, please.
I would do it.
I nominate Kevin.
I'll study up my parliamentary
nominate Kevin for vice
procedures
chair.
in
And I'll
case I gotta
second
sit in.
That's fine. Okay,
All in favor?
and nobody opposed. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We had, Mike, I suspect you're anxious to give the director's report, but there are at least a couple items from last
Yeah,
meeting.
no,
old business.
no,
Can we talk
because I was
about-
gonna speak on that
Oh,
next.
were you going to talk to
Stevenson
Stevens?
Creek.
Okay, and I also want to ask about the Clearwater Yacht Club and whether or not that resolution or that recommendation went to the city council
Which one?
about the minimum wake zone for the Clearwater Yacht Club in Bayside.
Oh, that has not. There's actually been no movement on that I've heard of. The only movement that we're working on is Stevenson Creek.
So the resolution, to change the order slightly for a minute or two, if I may, thank you. The resolution last time from Miranda and second and so on was that there ought to be something brought to the city council to suggest that we proceed with that minimum wake zone. So if we haven't done it, I'd like to see that happen, I guess, sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the Stevenson Creek one?
No,
No,
that was for
that's-
the
that's
Clearwater
the
Yacht
Yacht
Club and Bay Shore Drive, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
and, you know, I haven't been here for 40 years like Phil has, and I don't know why every other finger in Clearwater is permitted except for that. Well, that's the only one that's
Right.
not permitted, so I have no back history on that. But yeah, for sure. So I'll run that up the chain today.
Okay, thank you. So let's proceed with Stevenson Creek.
Okay, Stevenson Creek, that's why I thought you raised your hand. The city attorney is drafting an ordinance on that, and the city surveyor is doing a survey. So we're moving forward and seeing the feasibility of making that a no-wake zone, no slow-speed minimum wake zone.
And the primary issue is still that there's like one boat that just rips through.
Yeah, yeah. One boat, and then I've heard of some jet skis that are, you know, doing it. There's laws on the book. It's, you know, similar to reckless driving. You know, there's a tickets that can be done if they're just flagrantly driving blindly like it appears that they are. Go ahead, sorry.
There's no way for anybody to do anything about it because the bridges are too low. I mean, honestly, unless somebody was gonna sit on the bridge and then take
Yep.
fell numbers and, you know,
That's-
I don't know if you guys saw the email when I sent you a video. I live there, I live right at the bridge. And, I've seen jet skiers come through there literally at 40, maybe even 50 miles an hour. And if my wife or I were getting in our kayak right there, we could get killed like that. And
Somebody's gonna definitely.
it's gonna happen, I can tell you. There's been close calls and
And I think it was noted last time that the bridges are too low for the police boats to even get up there and
Yeah,
patrol.
Exactly right.
So it takes somebody landside to try to enforce this. You know, I don't know if a couple tickets would work while this process takes place of trying to get the no wake zone. You know, that's something that, you know, you can discuss with PD. But other than that, it's gonna be a long, slow process, but we're
Yeah,
started it.
what is that process? That's something I really kind of want to understand.
Well, you gotta get a survey of the area, survey it, you gotta draft an ordinance, and then you gotta get state approval that, yeah, you can do that there.
Why does it have to take a long time?
It's just a long process.
And to also fill you in on what we discovered in the last meeting was Clearwater single-handedly has more of these controlled zones than anyone in the state of Florida because of our unique structure and all the fingers. And they, every time you ask for another one, you know, they look at the count and they say, you know, why another one? What will you give up for that? Or maybe not necessarily give up, but how many can you have? How many can you enforce? And also the expense of now there's signage and all sorts of things that need to be budgeted and passed through the city council to actually get it all done. So it's quite a process.
Yeah, it's a long process for sure, departmental process.
What can I do to help that?
Nothing. I mean, unfortunately, there's just really nothing you can do. You're at the mercy of everybody else. It's a team effort, and you know, this person can't do this until he gets this information. This person can't do this until this information gets done, so.
The agenda item, if you look back at the agenda, there's a click through to a PDF that has the guideline for establishing.
Yeah, and I have it, I can share it with you when we get done.
Yeah, if it's in the agenda, I just didn't realize when I opened this agenda that
It's not in this.
live link, so I printed out the 2 pages that came up and,
It's in the last one.
yeah, I got you.
But I have the rules and the laws and the permitting process in my book over here. I'll share them with you.
Okay, yeah, I would like to know that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And
Any other
then,
questions?
are there other items in the director's report that you wanted to cover?
I got a lot of items in the director's report. I just don't know where to begin. I'll begin first off saying that.
I'm sorry, excuse me a second, Mike, Steve?
I recognize 2 of my neighbors back there. I don't know if they were here to comment on that or not, but, you know, you might want to ask them, so.
Were there further comments on the Stevenson Creek item?
I had just one, if it's all right.
Sure, please, come up to the mic, yeah, thank you.
Do I have to do this, or I wasn't sure with the whole talking thing?
If you just give me your name.
Brian Sargent, Sargent. I just had one question. I read through everything that had been forwarded through about what it takes to get this. I moved to the area 11 years ago and had an opportunity to speak with a number of the engineers that were involved in the dredging project that took place. And at one point, there were actually a couple of gentlemen from one of the, so many different agencies that I saw, but this particular one was out of Jacksonville. And actually, I'm certain I still have his name and number somewhere. He had indicated at the time that about 1 year prior to the dredging project, an inspection had taken place of the area, and there was no need to designate it as a no-wake zone, basically because at low tide, you couldn't boat in the area. Now that it's cleared out, you can. But he had also indicated that about every 7 years, the state did it on their own, where they kind of went around the state reassessing areas. And if I'm doing the math right, we should be at that within the next year or two. I just have no idea what age. There's so many agencies involved in this, I'm not sure which one it is. And then my only other question or comment, in some of the Google research that I did, and that's all I really have access to at the moment, I was wondering if there isn't a way to speed the process up or sidestep some of the other agencies in lieu of focusing on nuisance boaters and nuisance jet skiers, but just the environmental. Where I'm fortunate enough where my property is, where I work, I sit and look out at the water 12 hours a day. I've got literally hundreds of hours of video and thousands of pictures of manatee, dolphin, otter. We actually thought we'd lost to them. They'd been a bunch of them around, and we now just spotted them again this past weekend. Bald eagle, all types of pelicans. I mean, just the amount of just wildlife and the impact that every time one of these boats or jet skis comes in, it has on that. I didn't know if that could help speed things along a little bit.
Now we're talking about manatee zone. Sorry.
And that's what I'm kind of wondering, would a manatee zone in effect give us the same?
So he's absolutely right. The state studies and collects data on the wildlife for these manatee zones and things, and periodically they'll come in and issue a zone. Now, you can go out and issue your own zone, and the commission has to approve it, but the commission will expect you to go out and collect data and do all this stuff. So, you know, we'd have to hire a consultant to do that. Well, then they compare it to their data.
Okay.
And so it's not a for sure thing to get a manatee zone. In fact, it's going to be easier to get a slow speed minimum wake zone, and that's why we've chosen to go that route.
That was my question.
Yeah.
I was hoping the manatee zone would be easier to obtain.
Yeah, no, it's not, and that's why, because, you know, the state, for, you know, whatever reason, and I'm guessing it's just, you know, the political winds or whatever, you know, they're not wanting to have all these restrictions and all these zones. So it's like what Mr. McLaughlin or Mr. Groman was saying just a minute ago, and I forget which one. You know, they'll look at, you know, our zones are like, you got too many of them. And, you know, they'll want to, you know, try to combine them or do whatever, because each zone is its own permit. So each permit has its own ordinance. So they were piecemeal together over the years as this went on. So,
If I can make one other comment to his same thing from an environmental standpoint. Now, the county won't let people put seawalls anymore in there unless one or both of their neighbors have seawalls. He was lucky he was able to because his neighbor on one side had a seawall. I can't. I've got 181 feet on the water that I can't put a seawall, and every time one of those people come by and put out a big, huge wake, it erodes my property. And in the couple years I've owned it, there's significant sign of erosion, and that's why. And so, you know, that's another point that's all up and down the creek. And all that erosion also fills the creek back in, and we're gonna need to be dredged again, and somebody's gonna have to pay for that. So, or our waterfront property becomes useless as waterfront property and our values all drop. So that's another issue, so.
I also think we have, I'm not sure if you're, well, I'm sure
I'm
you
saying
are,
we
but-
build up a-
I'm sorry, but we have a new, I believe it's 78-unit condominium that's being built. Now, I understand that there's been permits applied for, or approved for a number of boat slips that are going to be inside the creek associated with that. And
Yeah, I spoke to the guy at the county that does docks, because I talked to him when I, you know, improved my dock. And he said, not only do they not have a permit in there, he doesn't see how they could ever permit that because it had to have been attached to the original condo building, and it's not. And they can't, even though they own the property, it can't be turned into a marina for that condo because it's not attached. And the permitting to do so would take years to do that.
well,
That's what I was told. Now,
That's good to know, just because I was worried about the additional boat.
yeah.
That brochure you saw was fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a.
Doesn't surprise me.
It was maybe even a legal sales tactic of saying, you're gonna have these nice boat slips, and there's no way there is ever gonna be boat slips there.
Just to tell you, my wife and I stopped by their sales office just recently because we were curious, and they told us that that marina is gonna be there. So they're still telling people that. And there's 4 blue buoys out there that showed up. I don't know what those are for either. And they're right where that would take place. So I don't know if somebody from,
Is this right on the corner there, right
Yep.
on Sunset?
right where that Spanish building is.
Okay. I actually owned one of the condos in the original project there, and we sold it before they collapsed.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
got-
gotcha.
and got our money out before the second
Yeah.
deposit was done, because you could see that they weren't selling, even back when it was the peak, so. So I'm really familiar with that section, and back then, they weren't
Yeah.
telling you there were gonna be docks.
So you're confident those won't be put in ever also? Because my concern is the channel, that would disrupt the channel.
I'm not the expert in the room, you know, Mike is, but,
Thank you, Brian.
but that was what we talked about at the last meeting, was how could they ever do that, because who's gonna give them the permit to put in those docks? Nobody is.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I'm sorry, did you have something you want to add, sir?
I did not, same thing he's gonna bring up.
Oh, okay. The other gentleman from before, yeah, something else?
The reason I'm here is really on the Manatee Zone. And,
Uh.
I presented here last time, but there's 2 new members. And I think what I'm saying is still as pertinent as it was. And I'd like to
I
explain.
still have my copy from last week, right
Okay,
here.
good. And I think the matter, I'm a little bit concerned that we
Yes,
are.
sir, you gotta talk to the microphone. But I mentioned that.
I'm concerned that there are really manatees here. It's not like a manatee zone. Here's pictures of them right here. We go back on our little pontoon boat, Stevenson's Creek, but they're also in the coastal area, which last time I talked to Ed Chesney, we talked about it, he says, well, there's a sign. Well, I don't know what the sign is because nobody that I know have seen this sign. But they come by there, and not in jet skis, they come by in those pretty good boats with those engines going like all get out. And if they hit a manatee, they would never know. It's gone. Now, I know there's a lot of signs in Manatee, in Clearwater, but let me point out, that's because we have manatees. There are places that do not have these shores where there are manatees. And we have something to protect here. And to say, hey, we don't want to disturb boaters for going too slow or whatever. The manatees are endangered. They are in trouble. They are in the intercoastal. There's pictures here you see where they cut up, they dig up, they graze the grass in the intercoastal. That's what I have pictures of there. They're under our docks on the intercoastal. There's a picture in there. It's the bay is shallow. You look at it, the water, you don't know if it's 1 foot or 20 foot. Well, it's about 2 foot deep out there. There's times when the water's down that I could walk across almost, except for the channel itself where it's cut. And it was cut to make the spoil islands, and that's why we have a channel. I can almost walk out there under low tide. So if a manatee is out there and those boats come by in the intercoastal before you even get to Stevenson's Creek. But my comment here is that we're worrying about Stevenson's Creek is, yes, they're out there. We've seen them breed out there. We've seen them do all the things out there. The kids, hey, that's really cool.
Right.
But they're also in the intercoastal, and we already can do something about that, and we're not doing anything about that either. So I'm asking if the Marine Advisory Board could look and see what the state is doing, you can do for what exists, and change it from manatee. I didn't realize it was slow speed was not just manatee protection. It should be manatee protection zone, because manatees are really there all year long. So thank you very much.
Well, again, last meeting, it's good I have the minutes today because it's well recorded. Thanks, Patricia. Mike, I suppose with Ed's departure, there are some things that it's probably hard to get to everything, but the decision recommendation last time was that the staff would communicate with the state regarding extending the manatee zone into Stevenson's Creek. Is there any discussion with the state on it?
Well, no, not with the state because of the ordinance. So that's why we're going with the slow speed minimum wake. If you look in the intercoastal, from Seminole Boat Ramp north to the opening of Stevenson's Creek, that's all a protected manatee zone, so that's all slow speed minimum wake. So our issue is getting into Stevenson's Creek and Stevenson's Creek, where manatees are, and I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's a lot, and I'm sure it needs to be protected from boaters that are going too fast.
Okay.
So either way.
So the answer is that proceeding with the ordinance will resolve it eventually.
It should be manatee zone, not low speed wake. And if it is manatee zone now, I mean, it's slow speed is mostly, to me, in my opinion, is protect the waters, the slopes of non-seawall properties. Manatee zones means watch out for the manatees, don't kill them. And there's a big difference, and I think we should be making sure that that's what, is it manatee zone out there in the intercoastal where the pink is?
Yes, that's all.
There's no signs out, they're not doing anything about it. And if we are really a city that prides ourselves on our manatees, we tell people, come to see our manatees. We do them, and then we say we have a pig zone and it means here. And by the way, I've looked up for that map on the internet and I can't find it. It should be on the top page of the website for City of Clearwater that says manatee zones, manatee protected, not down someplace under whatever form it is. And I think taking it one more step farther, City of Clearwater should be encouraging people more in their top thing, come see the manatees too. But that shouldn't be buried where we say, come see the manatee parts that the boats have destroyed and killed as they went through low areas that are already called manatee zones. Right. So I encourage this board, if they have some energy to do it, to go ahead and get with the council, tell them we need to have a manatees enforced where they're endangered, and it's our duty as citizens here and as the board to recommend. So that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a real quick question?
Yes, sir.
If I'm not mistaken, the manatee sign says, slow speed, no wake outside the intercoastal.
Off the top of my head,
I think that's what it says, because I
know it says manatee zone, but I don't know exactly the verbiage. There's two areas here that are manatee zones. So here's the downtown harbor marina. When you go across on the north side of the causeway here, there's a sign coming into this one, and then there's a sign when you leave that. And then also on the intercoastal from Seminole Boat Ramp up to the opening of Stevenson's Creek right before, there's a sign here, and then there's a sign on the north side of it.
Right.
I don't believe the other sign says that. I think it says stop, slow, wait zone. I haven't seen it say manatee or anything. about
Okay.
manatees.
Okay, well,
It could be added, and that's the whole problem. Nobody, it only covers the people going from
I'm
south to
sorry, you
north.
need to speak in the microphone.
I've been out there, my kids, we go out there in the water. That sign protects people going from south to north. They should know if they read it and they're going fast through a marina, they don't read it. There should be signs up along, 2 more signs at least that say manatee zone, slow zone, not go back to the beginning and stop and read it. There should be some that people can read, and if you're saying that people have actually, that's an adequate signing, I would like to, other people take a look at that and see if you consider that adequate signing, because it's not stopping anybody, and nobody that would just say, I didn't come that way, I came across from Clearwater area, I don't even come past that sign, I come across from Clearwater Beach directly across, or through any other channels. And that's not getting them. And if we're protecting manatees, that's what we should have signs from top where the manatees are, not where people would look at a sign and read it when they're going by. Thank you.
So if I could finish my point that I wanted to make, is that if that is a manatee zone there, and maybe the signage could be, if it doesn't say this, could be changed, because I boated enough to see these signs that say that it's a manatee zone outside the intercoastal and that it's slow speed, no wake. I would see Stevenson Creek being able to be considered outside the intercoastal, because it's not. So it could be easy to include that in that zone possibly, versus having it designated a new zone, as my only point, so.
Yeah. I'll make a note, I'll contact FWC.
Yes, Phil? Something?
We discussed that last month.
Yeah.
Or last meeting, I'm sorry, in December.
Okay, sorry.
The manatee zone, I've seen several on the south side of the Skyway, and the intercoastal runs, and there's signs every so often, manatee zone, slow, minimum wake outside the ICW.
Right.
Okay, so exactly, so if you establish that's a manatee zone, you put signage, it probably needs to be one in the middle between Seminole Landing and the creek, or one
Put them on
beyond
the
the creek.
bridges.
And one intermediate,
Right.
and that's what they have south of Skyway. They're all over the place. They've got the mangroves area, they've got everything, and outside the intercoastal, it's a slow, no-wake manatee zone. So that would solve the problem for Stevens Creek if they extended the manatee zone north of the entrance to the creek. We would include the creek, and problem solved. And then you're gonna
Right.
get somebody to ticket those that are not abiding by it, so.
All righty, hopefully we'll have an answer by next meeting. Thank you, Mike. All right, I don't know how your time is, but you got some items you want to get through yet, or
I'm sorry?
you had some other items in the director's
Oh, the
report you wanted
director's
to get
report,
through
yeah,
yet?
if you want to go, move on to the director's report. I was just going to let you know that the department has hired, the city has hired Deputy Chief Eric Gandy to come over and be the harbor master, which we're real all excited about.
What's his name?
Eric Gandy, Gandy. And, you know, he's an experienced boater, he's a pilot, so he understands the dynamics of everything that goes on over the water, and also out at the air park. So we're real excited to get him on board and to help us out. It's gonna be a really good fit.
When does he start?
He starts March 28th. I had a list of things to talk about. No, I just went blank. It's been a long meeting.
Yes.
As you know, we've been, working through this whole transition process with Ed, and then we have the beach marina redesign going on at the same time that I jumped into. But what we're also doing right now is we're still doing the downtown harbor marina 25-year master plan, which has showed that the 3 most southern wave attenuators on ADOC are deemed failed and beyond economical repair. So I'm working on a work order that's going to replace those 3 wave attenuators. It's going to be, a pretty price. So I have that coming up. Hoping to go in March, but early April to the city council. So, I'd like, you guys to get on board with that, making sure that those wave attenuators get replaced. You're going to see some work down there next week because we've got to do some temporary repairs just to make sure that those wave attenuators last the 6-month production of the new wave attenuators and the pilings.
This is our marina right here?
Yeah, or downtown Harbor Marina.
This is a different attenuator than we replaced after the storm?
Yes, this is the far south one. That has totally failed now. So we're going to replace 3 sections of that as well. And then we'll continue with the master plan, and they'll develop our maintenance schedule, our preventative and replacement schedule for the next 25 years. As you can also see that we are well below market value on our slip rent, so I was going to recommend, and I'd like you guys' approval to raise rates in May. I'm going to try to stay on the same schedule that Ed had last year. It's what I'm going to recommend. The only exception is the downtown tenants. Do not want to give them a raise just because of the construction that's going on and the nightmare that's been. And then the recreational tenants at the beach marina, I'm looking at a 5% increase. But the commercial operator, same thing, the 5, the 7, and the 10% increases. Gas. I keep always looking over at Phil for this. Gas is going to be a problem. Right now, I'm still fortunate that I'm able to sell my diesel to our commercial tenants at $3.99. The rate has gone up to $4.54. I know that they're purchasing diesel now for more than that. I just haven't done it yet. Haven't had to, but it's coming. So the gas prices are going to go up. Right now, how I have to price the fuel at the marina is I do a CMA of existing marinas. So I go all the way up to Anclote and all the way down. And that's how I try to keep my prices lower than Largo and some of the closer marinas around us, because I try to get a big, wide swath. And then the commercial tenants, we did that study that was 2 or 3 board meetings ago for the commercial tenants to come up with a discount. And I think it's been successful. There's sometimes that they have 60% or 60 cents off per gallon, and there's sometimes they have 4 cents off per gallon. So there's a wide range there, and that just depends on the cost of fuel when it's purchased.
Have you done away with the boat yes discount for?
Yeah, went away from the boat US discount for the gas. So the only discount we offer now is just for the commercial tenants. And that includes the ferry, and that includes the Clearwater Marine Aquarium, and of course, police and fire.
Biggest on the fuel, since Nicole's still here, and the whole footprint for a parking garage. The tanks, you know how far north the tanks go? I know they're,
I do not think that they go underneath that curb. If they do, it just barely underneath that curb.
you got the parking spots that are all along the seawall.
Mm-hmm.
You got the parking spots in that first island.
Right.
You're saying it's sitting within there.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't breach into that curb to that 3rd row of parking.
You couldn't put a parking garage over a fuel, could you? Or that's probably out of your. What's that? Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're wonderful.
Yes, you want to try to accommodate the fuel tanks outside the parking garage footprint and move the garage further to the north. So
It looked like, I can't remember now because I don't have it up, but it looked like it was kind of that your dotted line down the center of that area.
the fuel tanks are in the middle of the southernmost road section. Yeah, sorry.
Another thing that I would like to see is a parking garage. I think that's one of the most important things, is being able to have a parking garage. I know that there's some public-private partnership interest in that with some of the tenants out there. They've expressed interest in that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I talked to Troy Manthe last night, who's the Starship, the other dinner cruise boat there. And he was going to do some checking on how that could happen. I talked to Frank Chevis. Frank he may have said, yeah, well, I'm in, but he thought the city should do it. But he wants to discuss more of it, So, I've never done anything like that myself personally, but I'm open to looking at it and chipping in some principal and the long-term debt and release with the city, and as long as I can come out ahead, if it helps.
Yeah.
But I think the city probably should just, to their best interest, do it on their own. But, we'll look into it more. I've got a friend of mine who's a developer. I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet.
Yeah, so absolutely. But like I said, there's been some interest in some of that PPP partnership, perhaps. And I know the city manager and the parking manager are working with a consultant to get a feasibility study completed. But that's something that's important for the upland support, because with the new marina, besides people staying put and having what they have now, the people don't like change, and I get it. I understand that. But the upland support is really important for them to operate their business, and that's a need that needs to be there. And unfortunately, we just don't have the space with what we have currently. So a parking garage would really alleviate.
Would they not consider putting the parking garage where the beach parking is now? Because then you could have way more space. It doesn't have a tank underneath it, and it's probably closer walk to a lot of the boats than where the marina parking is now.
Yeah, that's something to be discussed for sure.
That seems an obvious location.
People would start screaming about
Yeah.
you're blocking the beach.
It came up in the past, lots and lots and lots of public resistance to the idea.
And I'd like to add in there that project stay just a parking garage, that we don't get into incorporating all these extra businesses in that parking garage, taking away possibly parking spots, but also extending the build period of time. Building a simple parking garage is a lot simpler than building a
One thing it's gonna need is
complex.
to be able to have a drive-through for deliveries. So there's gonna have to be things to this parking garage that, will allow our fuel truck to get underneath and into, to drop off fuel. For the big dinner cruises to be able to drop off their food and their supplies with their semi-trucks. So the bottom floor is gonna be utilized a lot for delivery and things like that, and that's where the storage aspect comes into it, even a storefront in the bottom, and then the parking above it. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh.
But I do have a comment. I feel like I did mention at the last meeting, do we have a direct contact to the FWC and to the Coast Guard that you communicate with when we have these issues?
Not direct, those decision makers, I don't know who they are. You can call up there, you can get some information from the FWC. I have a contact that I work with, but it's mostly for the vessels, the derelict vessels that are in the waterways. When it comes to the manatee zones, things like that, I don't have a direct contact.
They stop by I live right next to the bridge, literally, the bike bridge, so they stop there once in a great while. I'll see if I can't flag one down and see who a good contact would be. So I've been meaning to do that, I just haven't been able to catch them, so.
Yeah, a lot of the FWC that's around their enforcement.
Yeah, they're police officers essentially. But they might have a contact or something.
Yeah, they might, yeah, for sure. So if you do, yeah, sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Sure.
Back on the parking garage, I don't know if it would help, I'm not sure how this works, but to have a resolution from this board recommending to the city council that parking garage is desperately needed out there in the marina. If they saw something from the Marine Advisory Board, either a recommendation or a resolution, like I said, I'm not sure what the protocol is.
Yeah.
Before you can make any recommendations, it needs to be on the agenda.
Okay.
So if you want to put on the agenda for the next one, anyone can contact Michael with items for the agenda. But to make any votes, the item has to be on the agenda to give the public an opportunity to provide input.
Okay. Anything else, Michael?
I don't think so. I think that's about it.
All right, thank you.
Like rate increases,
Yeah, I mean, I think today's Wednesday. Pretty sure it is.
saying rate increases for the boats.
Yeah.
If you want them to
Yeah,
vote, it needs to be on the agenda.
Right.
Okay. With that, I guess we are at the point, is there anything, other items that board members want to bring up?
I just don't, well, I see that you are a broker.
Yeah.
And we didn't have time to ask what inspired you to join the advisory board.
Well, one, I live on the water, and two, I've been around Clearwater most of my life. I grew up on Island Estates and just have been involved. I had a sailboat at the marina. I have customers that have boats at the Clearwater Marina, and I just wanted to be involved. And honestly, the Stevenson Creek thing, I didn't even know was actually even being discussed here until I got the agenda, so that wasn't what drew me, but I am interested in it too, so that's what.
Okay.
Does that answer it?
Dina, same question perhaps?
Well, actually, I'm a transplant from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we have no beaches to speak of. So when I moved here about 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to learn about this new community that I had been transplanted to. And I think it was a couple of years ago, I went to the Clearwater, 101 class where I learned
Sure.
all about,
Citizens Academy.
everything, all the offices you guys have and everything. And I simply wanted to find some way that I could learn more and get more involved. And so I applied for several boards around here, and this is the first time that anything was accepted.
Great,
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
okay. Okay, with that, I think we can proceed and adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. All right.
Longest meeting
Yeah.
ever.
Ever.